Vikes Now, the post-trade deadline edition, heading into week 9 with 6-1 Vikings. I'm here with Josh Frey, who is our weekly Wednesday guest. How's it going, sir?
Doing good, man. Doing good. It's one of the last really nice days here in Minnesota. So, going to get outside this afternoon and just enjoy that, soak in all the sun before it starts snowing next week. So, yeah,
That's
looking
that's,
forward to it.
that's because you were trapped inside. You were hostage to the NFL's trade deadline, weren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We were talking off air a few minutes ago about how trades used to be a baseball and basketball thing, but now I believe the NFL is caught up. Am I wrong?
I think that's pretty much caught up, especially you see some of the stars that got moved yesterday. Bradley Chubb going to Miami, TJ Hockenson coming to Minnesota. We'll get into that, I'm sure. But yeah, I definitely think it's catching up here. So
It is indeed. All right. My first thing I'm going to ask you is random off the cuff, and I'm going to blindside you. You may not know the answer. It's been bugging me since I studied Roquan Smith's trade request in August. And then, of course, I do the weekly Vikings stats for Vikings territory. And I noticed something with Eric Kendricks. So right now, Roquan Smith, whether he plays for the Bears, plays for the Ravens, is considered a top blah, blah, blah off-ball linebacker in the NFL. He stuffs stat sheets with tackles and everything, passes defended, sacks. But habitually in his career, his pro football focus grade is in the 50s and 60s. And that's where Eric Kendricks is at right now. Now, Kendricks used to be a savant with PFF, like in the high 80s and 90s at the peak of his power. But I know you trust PFF to a degree. What gives when a guy like Roquan Smith is universally praised as a top 5 off-ball linebacker, but then his PFF is in the 50s or 60s because that's happening to Kendricks right now?
honestly, I've been wondering that exact same thing throughout his entire career. I remember, I think it was last year I was looking at some of his PFF numbers, and it's just how in the world is this guy so low? Like you said, he's probably one of the top 5 off-ball linebackers in the entire league. He's like Eric Kendricks. He just kind of does it all. He does it all pretty damn good. So I have absolutely no idea. We'll have to ask actually somebody at PFF about that one, I think.
Yeah, because it seemed like not a lot of people have grievances and beef with PFF, and they'll see something like this, and then they write it off altogether. Like, oh, I don't trust it, because blah blah blah. It's kind of like EPA per play or EPA CPOE with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's usually like a top 6-7 quarterback per that metric, but nobody on the planet thinks he's a top 6-7 quarterback. But yeah, all right, we'll keep an eye on that because I would eventually like an explanation from somebody because I was doing research for a Bears show back when that trade request came about. And I know that his numbers are sexy, and I know his reputation is Roquan Smith. And then I was going to see, like, God, let's just see how good he is at ranked. And I pulled it up, and I was like, this dude is ranked 60th. It's like he's
Yeah,
the
no,
60th.
I think he led the league in tackles last year. He's all over the field all the time. I wonder if it's something with his coverage
It must be.
that just throws it all out of whack because he's playing for that Bears defense where there's nobody in the secondary anymore. So, but even then, like 2018, they were spectacular against the pass. So you'd think that it would have been good then too, but who knows?
Right now, the Ravens, according to PFF, traded a bunch for the 64th best linebacker, off-ball linebacker in the NFL. That's where he's at right now with PFF, and it's just inexplicable. So, all right, we couldn't solve that mystery, but here's what we can dive into. You talked about Hockenson. You teased it at the top of the show. Nobody in this purple community believed that a splash that big with that much ripple would occur to the Vikings getting a tight end now who will be employed for the team for at least a half decade. It signals the end of Irv Smith Jr., at least wearing purple clothes. And then the other shoe dropped about an hour after the trade that Irv is probably going to miss 8 to 10 games, which is basically the rest of the regular season. So I don't think there's too many critics of the Hockenson trade. First, you were a little panicked because you thought it was a second and third for him. But when you saw the rest of the picks that came with, it's basically trading down a round or two in 2 drafts. So what is the temperature in the Hockenson trade, and how much does it open up a 2022 Vikings offense?
I love it personally. I think, especially if you look at some of the third down stats for this Vikings offense, they've struggled a little bit early in the year. And having a big guy like that, 6'5", I think he's like 250 for Kirk Cousins to throw to on like 3rd and 3, just get a few yards. And then down in the red zone, he's going to be absolute maniac down there with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen too. So I think that's going to be spectacular. Then you mentioned it, the picks. I did freak out a little bit about the second and the third. I didn't realize that the third round was in 2024, but yeah, if you look at it, they're really just moving down, and ultimately it's just straight up TJ Hockenson for a second round pick. So I'd do that 10 times out of 10 for Detroit. I don't know if I'd ever pull the trigger on something like that unless they really just really trust Amon-Ra St. Brown over there and really want to give him his money. But I don't know. I think this is a win for the Minnesota Vikings.
On the third down, they started off dastardly. The
Yeah.
first before the Bears game, they were like ranked 20, I think it was 25th, 26th NFL in third down conversion percentage. Then against the Bears, they were 12 for 15. So a lot of times we'll see a shitty Viking stat and we'll try to figure out what the outlier was. Well, there's also good outliers too. And the third downs against the Bears really drove it up. Right now, they are an average third down team. So with Hockenson in the mix, it figures to improve, but so he'll be under contract through the end of next year, 2023, and then we'll probably want a big payday. Do you think it is a lock that because they gave up this draft capital that he remains with the team and is used like Darren Waller? Probably can't be used much to Travis Kelce because Justin Jefferson's on the team. But is there like, because we're scarred by tight end trades mainly last year. Like, will he be used? Because there's a lot of mouths to feed for the Vikings.
I think he will. I think this trade makes a lot of sense to me because you really needed to go out and get a guy that can consistently be a second or a third target for this Vikings offense. Because Thielen and Osborne, they've been decent, but Thielen's been really good at drawing defensive penalties too. I think that's part of why his numbers look a little bit lower than they typically do. But you need to get another guy that can consistently catch the ball. Smith hasn't really blossomed like we thought he would before the season. Munt's obviously not going to be that guy for you, even though he did catch a touchdown pass last week. So
that's
that was
such a beautiful play call. Oh, I
know,
it.
Yeah. I loved it. But I, especially looking at, he's, I think, almost 10 million against the cap next year. I think you'd be offering him extension, maybe lower that number next year a little bit, just restructure the deal a little bit, give him more of a long-term stability. I think, yeah, there's no reason why you wouldn't do that right now, especially if he plays very well for the remainder of the season.
Another thing that I felt and at the immediacy of the trade and then even the day after, and hopefully the weeks and months, is that whether you want to believe it or not, you, the listeners, you personally, and then, me, is that Adam Thielen won't be a part of this team for too much longer because of his age. When you have Hockenson in the mix, assuming he continues this progression as a top 10 tight end, then you don't necessarily need a ginormous WR2. If you're going to be getting Hockenson the ball 7 to 12 times per game, he becomes your WR2. It's just like Travis Kelce. It's just like Mark Andrews. And so we're used to having kind of Kyle Rudolph as a cool footnote, and then what we thought Irv would be as a WR3 type in terms of targets. But now if Hockenson turns out to be the real deal, as in a top 5 tight end, then, KJ Osborne in the future can be your WR2. It's like the Chiefs model with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. Like, there wasn't too much time for more balls elsewhere when those two are at the peak of their power. So I think that's kind of an overshadowed thing, that if Hockenson is as good as he was in Detroit, and he had better be, then you're going to have a target hog. And, you don't necessarily have to have Justin Jefferson 2.0 as your WR2. Am I wrong there?
I think you laid that out perfectly. I think this is exactly like that Kansas City Chiefs. Even the LA Rams last year, like, they used Cooper Kupp as that wide receiver 1, and then Odell, they kind of spread the field a little bit with. So you got the Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen comp there too. And then Tyler Higbee, they used him basically as a red zone guy and as just their third down safety blanket whenever they needed him. So I think you could look at that and that's exactly what this Vikings offense is going to be moving forward.
Awesome. Now on week 8, the Vikings are triumphant by 8 points. They can't beat that's a law. It's a law. They can't beat anybody by more than 8 points. It has to be within that margin. They have to actually get a little bit more than 2-score lead, squander it, and then win the game. That's the blueprint. I think being there in the stadium, I think it was their most impressive win from cover to cover since the Packers game. And it certainly wasn't, an ass kicking, and I wasn't, confident the entire game that things were going to go smoothly. But in the third quarter, they actually scored points and touchdowns, which was completely unheard of for all of the 2022 season. And their pass rush was there. So give me a few minutes worth of takeaways against the Cardinals before we preview the Commanders.
Yeah, I think end to end, this was probably the best this defense has ever played for this entire season, at least consistently. Zadarius Smith, 3 sacks on the day. And then Patrick Peterson he just keeps on turning back the clock, man. He's one of the best cornerbacks in this entire league right now, and he's on a roll. He's on a roll. I think even Cam Dantzler is getting in on the action. Harrison Smith, this entire secondary, they played very well. And I think this is kind of Ed Donatel showing that he's starting to figure out how to stop some of these mobile quarterbacks, I think. So this is a really good sign moving forward, I think. Even with some of the special teams blunders that they had again, with Greg Joseph missing a couple kicks there, they managed to pull this one out, and that's really all you can ask for.
Yeah, they did contain Kyler Murray, who, man, when he's on, and I don't know how many games that is per year, but then when he's not, he's just kind of decent, and it's weird because usually by now dudes that have that prognosis of being superstars have jumped that ladder. So I don't know if he's quite going to do that. I mean, I think he's a little erratic and moody, and that might be a detriment. But on the Vikings offense, I swear, even though most of us are mesmerized with the pass first nature of Kevin O'Connell, he's a former quarterback, he's going to sling it all over the place. Isn't this offense really at its best when it's balanced and running the football?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, we saw it. We saw it on Sunday. Dalvin Cook getting the ball. Finally got over 100 yards rushing this year, which was great to see. I know we'd had a little bit of concern early in the year about whether or not he'd lost a step, but he's obviously shown against Miami with that 50-plus yard touchdown, and then this week against the Cardinals, he's still got it, man. And when you give him the ball, he's going to make good things happen. And then Alexander Mattison too. He had a few good runs there as well. So yeah, I think if you can keep running the ball this way, especially against a Commanders team that's not particularly great against the run this season, I'd say do it all the time.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that I think Madison's probably in his final months as a Viking, because this, per histrionics, his age, this is probably this and next year will be the best version of him possible. You know, his brain matches his body in terms of performance, and he's damn good. Sometimes on some of those runs, he just looks like a total, like, just Robin to Cook's Batman, and not even that much of a drop back. So it's kind of sad that it's inevitable that he leaves next year, because he is playing pretty damn well, and I'm very, very glad that we didn't trade him. So we got the Cardinals down. They dropped 3-5, doing some soul searching. Kingsbury's probably starting the slow march to temporary unemployment, but the Commanders are on the docket, and they have won 3 straight, which I absolutely love it when a team has a winning streak when we're going in to play them, you know, because it's when they're hungry and desperate, that's when I'm like, oh yeah, they're going to figure out a way to chip off the Vikings here. But they're led by Taylor Heineke, who started his career in Minnesota. Looks like they're about to have their owner sell the team. They're in flux. Is there anything about this game that scares you, based on the Vikings' history of turds in games like this at times?
I'd say the run defense is probably going to be considering the most, just because Washington has done, especially on this winning streak, they've done a really good job of controlling the clock. I think against Green Bay, they held the ball for like 37 minutes of that game.
I remember that.
So yeah. So if you're not allowing Kirk Cousins this offense to get on the field, you're probably not going to win. But I have to throw something at you too, Dustin.
Yeah.
Stat wise. Maybe I'm just completely oblivious, but I looked at some of the Vikings run defense numbers today. They're pretty damn good against the run this season. 6th overall in yards allowed. I think they're tied for 7th in yards per attempt. So credit to Ed Donatel. Like, we give him shit all the time for, oh, he can't stop a mobile quarterback. Oh, the pass defense hasn't been great, but this run defense has completely turned around from what it's been the past couple of years. And if they can continue to contain Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, all those guys over there, this should be go into Washington, get a win, headed to Buffalo.
I can tell you exactly what happened that made you, me, and the rest of us feel that way about the run defense. Is so last year, or 2020, especially 2020, in 2021, it was horrendous. Like, chunk yardage every time. That was the season where I'd get excited if they held a guy to only 4 yards. So we thought, all right, we got this revamped defense. Zimmer's gone. It's got to get better. In week 1, they were not good. Right. That was the one downfall against the Packers, is that Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon had their way with the Vikings run defense. So that first impression said, oh, same shit. Here we go again. Can't stop the run. And then they've improved steadily, like climbing a ladder. And it's been gradual, that it hasn't felt like a sock it to me moment where we're like, oh, okay. But they have indeed got better, and now it's to the point where it's good. It's not just average. The run defense is good, and I think it was just so incremental that nobody had a parade for it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Green Bay, we definitely it looked like the same old.
Yes.
And then that game against Philly, just everything went wrong. And you just like, okay, well, this defense is just not that good. But yeah, like you said, this has just been a work in progress, and they've done the work and they've put in the progress, you know. So they're one of the top 10 units in the league now. So it's
One
great to
thing
see.
one thing about that Philly game that I've also so we got some sample size now. We got 7 games of Kevin O'Connell, is that was the only game where our usual cynical old Vikings fears, like, oh, we're gonna lay an egg on the road Monday Night Football, actually happened. The rest of the stuff, oh, they're gonna suck after the bye week. Nope, they didn't. All of these little strange, oh, we're gonna go down to Miami and lose to first quarterback, rookie quarterback. That's going to be a loss because the Vikings always lose in the situations. It didn't happen. So that Philly game was kind of like an outlier in the sense that our usual cynicism was applicable. But every step of the way since, like even winning little squeaker games in London because the dude had a double doink, it seems like some of that bad shit is being dispelled. And, we're just like, oh, this is really cool. We're 6-1. Do you think this is the first game where the Vikings win by more than 8 points since week 1? Or is this going to be another unnecessary thriller?
Man, I hope so because I don't know how many I don't know how many more of these close games I can handle, Dustin.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope they go. I do think they're going to go into Washington, and Taylor Heineke. You give him all the credit in the world. He's definitely got that it factor in him, but I'm not necessarily convinced by the talent level, especially with this team. There's so many distractions going on with the owner and everything going on over there right now. So I do think that Minnesota, Kirk Cousins revenge game, they're going to go in there, maybe stomp them around for a little bit. Maybe they get a touchdown at the end to cut it to 10 points or so. But I do think that this is going to be a double-digit win.
On Taylor Heineke. So he's been he's been in our universe for about 5-6 years. And now he's been a fringe type of starter for Washington in the last 2-3 seasons. And every time I watch a game of his, in the middle of first, second, third quarter, I'm like, this guy sucks. Like, what do
Yeah.
people see in him? And then in the fourth quarter, he gets gritty. He doesn't do the gritty. He gets gritty. And they usually, in a game where, they're not playing the Bills or the Chiefs, they find a way to win. So I think it has that lovable part of him that, he's Case Keenum-ish. Like, he finds a way to get it done, baby. But I swear, every game I watch, I'm like, why do the Vikings fans miss this guy? He sucks. But when it's all said and done in a close game, he'll usually find a way to make it really competitive or win. Is that somewhere close to accurate?
Yeah, I think so. Especially you look at some of the numbers in their last game against the Colts. It makes absolutely no sense that they won that game. Like I think Indy beat them in rushing yards. They beat them in time of possession. They beat them in penalties. They beat them in third down. Like it makes absolutely no sense that the Commanders won that game. Obviously, Indy was starting Sam Ellinger, so maybe that adds a little bit to do with it. But yeah, like you said, this dude, he's definitely got that it factor to him. Like you even saw it in that 2020 game against the Buccaneers that they lost.
Yeah.
Like that dude kept him in it for the entire game and somehow in his first career start almost beat Tom Brady. So
when you were talking, this is completely un-Vikings related. You were talking about the rush defense kind of sneaking up on us and being good and pouring through the numbers like I do every week. I realized that Cooper Rush for the Cowboys really wasn't that good. He had that dazzling quarterback record, but when you pull his numbers, whether it's PFF, DVOA, EPA per play, all of it, he really wasn't any good. And I don't know, we got hoodwinked, I think, by the national media. Like, this guy 5-0 as a starter, game-winning drive. And it was really a statistical no-brainer that they would go back to Prescott. So when they got smoked, was that Sunday night or Monday Night Football a couple weeks ago against the Eagles, it kind of made it easy to go back to Prescott because in reality, Cooper Rush really was just Cooper Rush according to his individual statistics.
yeah, we're going to talk about this when the Vikings play them.
Good
but
point.
This defense over there in Dallas is crazy. We should probably be pretty scared about that game.
We have to win that game because I was trying to figure out. I've been to 3 Cardinals games now since I became a season ticket holder, and they were one of the first teams, in addition to the Cowboys and Saints, to come to US Bank Stadium for a third time. It's only been open for 6 years. 3 times the Cowboys have come to the bank and won. And
Oh man.
it's kind of a stat that none of us really let sink in. But just as much as the Vikings used to go to Seattle during the Russell Wilson era and lose, like, oh shit, here we go. The Cowboys fans are probably like, oh sweet baby, we get to go to Minneapolis because we always win there. Since that place opened, the Vikings are 0-3 against the Cowboys at home.
Yeah, we got to win that game. This is Washington is probably the last true game that you can really consider a gimme moving forward for the rest of the season. I guess you also have the game against Indy at home, but all 3 road divisional games, you got to go to Buffalo. You got the Patriots, you got the Cowboys, you got both New York teams, which apparently are no slouches anymore. So, and like you can say anything you want about Detroit, but they were 0-10-1 going into their home game against the Vikings last year, and they won. So I don't think we can really consider them to be a slouch anymore either for that game. But yeah, this is the last one where you go on the road, you have to get this win, and then you really get into the tooth and nails of the schedule.
And we knew it. We knew it as soon as the bitch came out. We're like, ooh, this is when it gets messy. Bills, Cowboys, Patriots. And then we thought we had a gimme against the Jets, but that's evidently no longer a total gimme. I don't think they're as good as their record is, but they're scrappy. All right, so 7-1. Isn't it weird to think that even if they totally collapsed and finished 3-7 or some shit, they'd probably still get into the postseason?
They'd still do it.
Isn't that weird? How unsung the 6-1 start feels versus how the city should just be on fire with enthusiasm.
Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. Yeah, we're kind of even now, like we're talking this through, we're kind of predicting a little bit of a slowdown here. Yeah. I think.
Well, we know that the Bills thing's going to smack us in the face. Just a matter by how much.
Yeah, if the Vikings managed to win that game, like, oh my God, I can't even imagine what would happen on this fan base. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that would be if they don't blow out the Commanders or I think fans really just need to see a 2-touchdown win. They need to win like 20 or 31-17 or something to be like, all right, we did what we were supposed to do. But until then, any sort of win against the Bills would really get folks, getting invested. Even the people that hardly watch football in Minneapolis would start to be like, oh wow, that's the way it goes. All right, so you got what was your final score prediction? Did you give it?
I'm gonna go Vikings 28, Commanders 17 for this one.
Okay, this is always risky business for me because when I put this out in the stratosphere, it makes me look super, super confident. But I am banking on the Vikings actually beating the pants off somebody. And because O'Connell used to work there and Cousins played there for 6 seasons altogether, I think they finally crushed somebody. So I'm going 41-17 Vikings.
Oh man.
And
right.
I always hesitate putting a blowout, out in the open or on paper, because then they only win by 7. You look like an idiot. But I really do feel like they're sitting on a game where they really take care of somebody. So I'm going this one.
Awesome. Well, I hope it happens because like I said, these close games, man, these close games are getting to me.
Absolutely. Same here. All right, we'll be back Wednesday. I said this last week to either talk about 7-1 team or 6-2, which really isn't that bad. We would just be a little grumpy that they had to lose to Kirk's old team.
Sounds good, my man.
All right, we'll talk to you next Wednesday, sir.
Peace.
Later.